Hello and welcome to the first ever podcast episode of Health Habits. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for tuning in. I think that you are going to find this podcast really useful. I think you're going to get a lot of value from it. I don't think you're going to be disappointed. So what I would absolutely love you to do is just press the little subscribe button. Then you will get notified of whenever I upload a podcast episode. You'll never miss a podcast episode, but I'll make a deal with you. If you get to the end of this podcast episode and you didn't like it, you didn't enjoy it, you don't have to subscribe. But if you did enjoy it and you feel like you want to hear a little bit more of my voice pumping into your ears, then press that little subscribe button and I promise I won't disappoint you. Anyway, today I'm going to be running through my 11-week photo shoot prep, just because I am somebody who's really nosy and I love listening to other people's experiences on their journeys of doing things like photo shoot prep, contest prep, just any challenging experience. I love to get the lowdown on it. So I thought that some of you might have a little bit of interest into how my photo shoot prep went. So if you are, stick around and I'll give you all the juicy info on what went down. I'm not going to lie, the first 4 weeks were honestly a breeze. And look, the first kind of month or so of a fat loss phase, of a weight loss journey, it's not going to be the hardest just because your motivation is the highest. You're the least hungry you're going to be because your calories are the highest they're going to be, right? Unless you do like a diet break or a refeed or whatever. Your cravings are going to be at the lowest point that they're going to be. It's just going to be the easiest part of it. Week 1, what I will say, I went into it with this dreadful tightness on the right side of my back. And I have no idea where this came from, but it pissed the hell out of me because I've never had a tight right side of my back before. And when I tell you it was tight, it was tight. It was horrible, okay? It was causing me so much pain. I was literally getting up from my desk during work every 10-15 minutes to use one of those massage balls on it. You know, the round massage balls that have the little spikes coming out all over them and like they really get into the little nooks and crannies. If you don't have one and you get knots in your back quite regularly, they're really great. But yeah, I have no idea why. I just woke up with it feeling really tight one day. Usually the left side of my back is tighter than the right, and that's something that I've had for a while, something that physios and and it's something that people who give sports massages, let's go with that, have flagged to me many times before. So I have no idea why the right side of my back was so tight. But it was a nightmare, honestly. It was affecting my ability to do some exercises as well because it was pulling. I have to say, I went into my training sessions this week as well with not a great mindset. I definitely slacked with my intensity and the amount of effort I was putting into my sessions and into my lifts, just because I got into the mindset that, well, muscle growth isn't the goal here, so why am I going to bother keeping my intensity high? And I definitely slacked off in that area. Luckily, I had Danny, my coach, to give me a kick up the arse and give me the very useful reminder that if I want to retain muscle during this fat loss phase, then I need to pull my finger out and actually put some fucking work in and stop being such a lazy bitch, basically. So that's what I did. That definitely gave me the kick up the arse I needed, because training intensity pretty much throughout the rest of this photo shoot prep, I kept really high. Week 2, again, the right side of my back was still really tight. But apart from that, week 2 was a breeze. Again, I hit all my nutritional targets. My strength was still progressing, and actually this is a common theme that you're going to see throughout up until about week 9 or week 10. My strength did still progress quite consistently throughout, and I think that just shows that that kick up the arse in week 1 with my training intensity worked, because I fucking worked hard during my training sessions because I was not accepting any muscle loss. I mean, it's some muscle loss is to be expected, but I wanted that to be minimal. So I did work hard during my training sessions throughout the duration of it. Week 3, again, a breeze, nothing really to note. Nutritional targets all hit, strength still progressing. Week 4, again, nutritional targets all hit, strength still progressing. I did have a night out this week because I graduated during this week. I've got a master's in sport and exercise psychology that I actually completed over a year ago, but obviously with COVID, graduation was put on hold till this year. So what I did is went out with my uni friends, had a few drinks. However, the drinks took me over my calories. And the reason why is because I didn't plan for them. And I think this just goes to show why planning is so important. If you've got a social event and you don't want to go off track and you do want to fit it into your nutritional targets so you can consume calories that are in line with your weight loss goal, with your fat loss goal, whatever it may be, just bloody plan for it. Just plan for it. It will take you 5-10 minutes and then you'll know going into that social event what you can eat, what you can drink to stay on track. The reason why I didn't plan is because I was telling myself, right, I'm not going to drink any alcohol because I'd rather have those calories for food, just from a hunger management perspective. But I wasn't honest with myself because I knew at the back of my mind that I was going to drink. Right, because whenever I go out with this group of friends, I always drink and I enjoy drinking with them. And if I had just been honest with myself and told myself that I was going to drink and planned it into my calories, it would have been fine. Anyway, like, it's not a big deal. I was only about 400 or 500 calories over, like, perspective here. It wouldn't have made absolutely any difference at all. But I think it's just the fact that if I had planned, then it would have been fine. And it's just emphasizing that planning is key. Planning is key. And that's just something, a little nugget of information to remember going forward. Week 5 was a difficult week. I was really sick from a cold this week. And I think absolutely everyone and their mother has had a cold, at least one cold this year that's absolutely knocked them for 6, because obviously last year none of us were out and about, and barely any of us caught a cold or caught the flu. So this year they've just been knocking us out like flies. So that was a really nasty cold. I didn't resistance train. However, I was still going out to hit my step target. I still somehow got all my cardio in because I've got this little stepper indoors that I use to get my extra steps in if I've got a few thousand that I still need to do in the evening. I don't want to go out in the dark, and I was doing my cardio on that. I still hit my nutritional targets every day, to be honest. I had one day where I felt really sick, where I didn't hit my step target, didn't hit my calories because I just wasn't hungry. But other than that, I didn't let the cold deter me. I powered on through. Okay, wait, can I just say as well, I felt okay to still do my cardio and still do my steps. If I genuinely felt really sick, if my energy levels were really low, I wouldn't have pushed through. I'm all for listening to your body. If you feel sick and you feel like you need to rest, take that rest. The reason I was still doing my steps and my cardio is because I felt okay to do so. But if I didn't feel okay, I would have listened to my body and not have done that. Like on the day where I did feel really sick, I listened to my body, sacked off my steps, and didn't force myself to eat food that I didn't really want. Week 6, back in the gym, back to resistance training, and my God, did my strength take a hit from having that week off and being sick from the cold the week before. I'm not going to lie to you, I absolutely hated my training that week. It was just so difficult, but not difficult in a way that I was enjoying the challenge and wanted to push through it. My strength was just so low, and I just couldn't be bothered to push myself that week, as I was just getting so frustrated at how much my strength was down and how heavy all the weights felt. So yeah, I'm not gonna lie, my motivation to train that week was really, I still kept my training intensity high. I was just doing a lot less than I would have liked in terms of weight and reps and things. Week 6 is also the week that the dreaded constipation started, and plagued me for the rest of the fat loss phase. So constipation is quite common when you're pursuing fat loss and you're pursuing weight loss, just because you have less food volume in your digestive system. So there's less to essentially push it through. So the constipation started at about the halfway point, and as I said, it plagued me throughout the rest of it, which was not fun, not gonna lie. So week 6, I was also visually holding a lot of extra water, a lot of information. It was really, really visible in my photos, and that extra water, that inflammation was literally just from being sick the week before, having a week of resistance training, going back in, giving it my all, training with intensity, and having that extra inflammation from that. And it was very visually noticeable in my photos, and I won't lie to you, I found that really frustrating. Obviously, I had a goal to reach. I wanted to get visually leaner for this photo shoot. So the fact that I looked less lean than I did 6 weeks ago when I started, I found very, very frustrating. But again, this is where having a coach to ground you is really, really, really helpful. So I spoke to Danny about it, and she just reminded me of all the reasons why I was looking like that: inflammation, extra water, yada, yada, yada. And it just made me feel a lot better. And then the next time I took my photos, I was looking back to how I wanted to look. Going into week 7, I found that I was still struggling with some of my lifts. So my strength on pretty much all my lifts went back up to what it was before I was sick, but there was 2 that I was really, really struggling with, and that was my bench and my hip thrust. And I was finding that I was getting so frustrated with these, just because these were 2 lifts that I was progressing so well with before the fat loss phase, especially my bench. I was so happy with how my strength on the bench was progressing, and the fact that my strength was dropping so quickly over such a short period of time, I was getting very, very frustrated. And actually that was one of the reasons why my coach Danny swapped out my barbell bench press for a dumbbell press, was to try and remove that element of frustration I was getting, and also for a safety factor as well. Week 7 was also the week that I noticed my energy levels noticeably start to drop due to the calorie deficit. However, something good came out of week 7, and that was that my abs started showing through. Oh yeah, all that work finally started to pay off, because we all know how we love to see that ab pop. I was so happy when I could see my abs visually start to show a lot more. Like, I was definitely that person at the gym staring at themselves in the mirror, tensing their abs, getting all those angles, getting all those good angles in the good lighting. That was a good week for that. Week 8, strength overall, still progressing, bar bench and bar hip thrust, but we don't talk about those. Yeah, strength overall still progressing, but obviously at a much slower pace, which is to be expected. Something that Danny, my coach, was emphasising to me throughout this fat loss phase was strive to maintain your lifts and take progression where you can. So the fact that I was still progressing with my strength with a lot of my lifts, even if it was just squeezing out an extra rep every couple of weeks, was massive for me. And that was a really, really big motivator and really, really big driving factor to keep me training with high intensity during my sessions. So I was really pleased about that. As I just touched on, hip thrusts, I was still massively struggling with these. I was dropping the weight back to weight that I hadn't done in quite a few months, because I'd progressed so far from it. And I was struggling to hit reps that I was doing with a much heavier weight at the start of the fat loss phase. So as I'm sure you can understand, I was getting very frustrating with that. But it all doesn't matter, because my abs were still popping, and the abs popping is, of course, the most important factor. Even though my abs are popping, I was noticing that I was looking visually a lot more flat in terms of my muscles. So abs are popping, but all of my other muscles were not popping. And that's literally just because when you go into a calorie deficit, your muscles do not store as much muscle glycogen. Glycogen is what carbs are metabolized into, and stored in your muscles. Glycogen binds to water, and that water is what makes your muscles look bigger and pop more. When you're in a calorie deficit, your muscles will release a lot of that glycogen for use for your energy and things, and you don't have as many carbs going in, so you don't have as much glycogen to store. Less glycogen in your muscles means less water retention in your muscles, means muscles looking flat, basically. So I found that a little bit frustrating, but also I understood why it happened. And also Danny had a couple of high carb days planned for me ahead of my shoot, just to re-up muscle glycogen and make things pop a bit more, make things look a bit less flat. Motivation with my training and nutrition was still very, very high in week 8 actually, and I was still being very consistent with my training, with my nutrition. What I will say is during week 8, my cravings and my hunger were noticeably worse. Because of this, Danny did give me a refeed over that weekend, which it was nice having more calories over the weekend. I did get to eat some foods that I wasn't eating because they were slightly high calories, and I was prioritizing lower calorie, higher volume foods. So it was nice getting to eat those foods. However, it didn't really help in terms of my hunger and cravings, but it was nice at the time getting to consume more calories. So there's that. Week 9, we are now 3 weeks out. This was an eventful week, I have to say. This was the first week that I noticed my relationship with food take a bit of a hit, which is normal. If you're working towards a fat loss goal and the main goal is visual, is body composition related, is aesthetic, then your relationship with food is probably going to take a hit. And I knew that going into it, but I also knew going into it I had such an amazing relationship with food, and I didn't always, by the way. I had to work on that a lot for a few years, but going into it I had such a good relationship with food. I had almost like a lot of wiggle room for that to decrease a bit and still be okay in myself and with my mindset. So week 9, training is still good overall at this point. The constipation was bad this week, and that did have an effect on my scale weight, on scale weight fluctuations. That's also something to consider as well, and I think this is something that's quite overlooked. If you are constipated, that will affect your scale weight. So if you jump on the scale and the number is higher than what you expected or higher than what you wanted it to be, if you are constipated, then just recognise that that's probably the reason why, and it's not because you haven't made any progress or you're doing a shit job or whatever. So just bear that in mind going forward. Week 9, in terms of my mindset, I won't lie, it was bad. My mindset was not good during this week. I felt so deflated. I felt like all my drive and all the motivation I had just went. I felt like it was just sucked out of me. Bearing in mind, I am a very, very motivated and very, very driven person. I always have been. It's just in my nature. So to just have that drive and motivation taken away from me, what felt like, I did find it quite frustrating. I think it was probably a combination of the bad weather, because this is the first week we had of the year where it was very, very cold. My boiler broke this week as well, which meant my house was absolutely freezing. My house is freezing at the best of times, let alone with no heating and no hot water. And then obviously tired and irritable from being in a calorie deficit for 9 weeks. I think all of those reasons kind of compounded and caused me to lose all of the drive and all of the motivation that I had. It was a real, I cannot be fucked week. I couldn't be asked in my training. I couldn't be asked to do any work for my business. I couldn't be asked to stick to my nutrition. I couldn't be asked to do anything. I just wanted to do nothing and eat loads of food in bed and watch Netflix. However, something that I am really proud of myself for this week is that I still pushed through regardless. I still trained with good intensity. I still got everything I needed to get done for my business. I still hit my nutrition targets for the most part, and I'll get onto that in a bit. What I will say is I did really, really, really have to dig deep to stay consistent, but I did it, and I'm proud of myself for that. I am really proud of myself for that. In terms of my nutrition and my mindset around food, I guess this week was the first week that I had a taste of old, poor relationship with food thoughts creeping back in. So I had a thought that I acted on automatically that caused me to go over my calorie target. And I wasn't frustrated that I went over my calorie target. So only about 200 calories, not going to make a difference. I was just frustrated that I had this thought and acted on it without working through it. So the thought was, if I do extra cardio, I can eat this protein bar. And like I said, I automatically acted on it. I ate the protein bar and I felt very, very frustrated with myself. And the reason why I'm so frustrated with myself is because this is the exact mindset work I do with my clients, right? A big aim for me, for my clients, is to get them to a point where they are able to pinpoint and identify these thoughts and work through them so they don't automatically act on them. So the fact that I did that, the fact that I didn't see it in myself, I didn't work through it, I just found incredibly frustrating, because to me, I should be an expert on this. I should just be able to do this without even thinking, and it shouldn't even be an issue, because if I can't, then how can I coach other people on it? But I think that's just where self-compassion comes in, accepting that I'm only human, I make mistakes, and as long as I reflect on them and learn from them, then it's okay. So anyway, after it happened, I did some journaling because I wanted to pinpoint and understand why I had had that thought and why it had happened. And I recognized that over the prior few weeks, I had been having feelings of frustration, and I'd been feeling fed up that essentially I couldn't eat what I want when I wanted, and I was not enjoying the restraint that I felt around food. I think this is largely down to the fact that for the past 3.5 years of my life, I've not experienced that restraint around food, and I'm not used to having to restrain myself around food. So I've developed a very, very good relationship with food over the past kind of 3.5 years. But that came from me going through a period of having a really poor relationship with food. You know, the usual: overeating, restricting, going to the gym to do a bunch of cardio to try and burn all of the calories that I'd eaten off. All of that stuff that I'm sure you're probably familiar with, and I'm sure so many other people are very familiar with. And to get myself out of that, I basically did about 2 years of my life, no calorie tracking, no tracking my scale weight. I literally just trained for fun, trained for performance, trained for strength, and ate completely intuitively. I ate fully in line with my body's hunger cues. And what that looked like to me was a mainly nutritious whole foods diet, because I was eating foods that I genuinely enjoyed and that satisfied me, but I had no limit on the amount that I could eat. And for me, that also looked like not restricting any foods at all. So if I wanted some chocolate, if I wanted a donut, if I wanted some biscuits, if I wanted some crisps, if I wanted a takeaway, I would just have it. There's none of this, no, you can't have that, that's bad for you. If you eat that, then you have to go to the gym and do 2 hours of cardio to burn it off. None of that. If I wanted it, I ate it. I didn't feel guilty for it. Didn't feel like I had to go to the gym and work it off, all of that good stuff. And actually doing that and eating fully in line with my body's hunger cues and prioritizing whole food, nutritious foods meant that actually I wasn't really craving the foods, that the lower quality, more processed foods like chocolate, sweets, crisps, whatever. I wasn't really craving them, so I wasn't actually eating them that much. But whenever I wanted them, I did eat them. I didn't have that restriction there. And actually, even though I wasn't tracking, I still maintained my weight over that period. And then when I went back to tracking, so when I was tracking at my maintenance calories, when I went into a slight surplus a couple of times, even though I was tracking my calories, I was still not feeling restrained with what I was eating. So it's just going into this photo shoot prep that I've had that restraint that I haven't had in so many years, and it was just making me feel a bit frustrated, a bit fed up, But then I also reminded myself that this is my choice. I've chosen to impose this on myself. I don't have to do this. I can stop literally any time I want. So actually that frustration I was feeling, not fully justified, and that kind of helped me overcome that in that sense. And I think that's really important to realize as well, when you're having feelings of frustration, disappointment, that you can't eat something, that you can't drink something that you want, just remember that you've chosen to do this. You've chosen to pursue weight loss, to pursue fat loss. This is your choice. So actually those feelings of frustration, probably not fully valid, because you don't have to be doing it. It is your choice. Week 11, 1 week out. This was an interesting week. All I'm going to say is this week was a bit of a write-off. My training was actually okay, apart from my first leg session of the week, which was a full-on I cannot be fucked session. I am embarrassed to say that it was probably the most half-assed piece of shit I've ever done in my life. I just went into it with the complete wrong mindset. I think that I had all those thoughts and all those memories of how mentally challenging this particular leg session had been in the few weeks prior. And I just couldn't muster up the willpower, the motivation, just anything to do it properly. And I don't really want to talk about it anymore, because it was a bad session. And I was quite disappointed in myself afterwards for not just pushing through and getting it done. But whatever, it is what it is. We move on. I think that I probably made up for it in my other sessions across the week anyway. Constipation during my final week was still lingering, still being a bit of a pest. That was fine. I was pretty much used to it by this point anyway. Nutrition, on the other hand, was an absolute disaster. So I ended up engaging in an overeating episode on the Saturday, not the Saturday before the shoot, the Saturday the week before. So I was about 12 days out. Yes, I was frustrated with myself that I gave into my cravings, gave into my hunger, just the fact that I had no willpower. But again, it is what it is. I didn't restrict food the next day. I didn't do excess cardio or anything like that, because we don't do that around here. If we have an overeating episode, then we accept that it happened, we reflect on it, and we absolutely do not try and make up for it by doing extra cardio or restricting calories, because no good comes from that. I did go over my calories every other day that week as well. I didn't have any more full-on overeating episodes, but I did end up going over my calorie target, and I averaged out my calories for that week, including the overeating episode, and I was hovering at around my maintenance calories. I think there was a few reasons why my motivation to adhere to my calorie target was so low that week. And the first reason, I guess, was a pretty positive reason. I went into that week feeling so happy with my body composition. I didn't really feel a need to be in a calorie deficit anymore, because I didn't really feel a need to lose any more body fat. I also feel like I went into that week with the complete wrong mindset. I went into it thinking, what is even the point in being in a deficit anymore? Because it's only a week, and in actual fact, it was only about 5 days, because Danny upped my calories on the Saturday and Sunday before the shoot. So actually, I was at I knew I was going to be at or close to my maintenance on the 2 days before the shoot. So I went in thinking, like, 5 days, 5 more days in a deficit. Really, what visual change to my body composition is this really going to make in terms of lowering body fat further? I think I wouldn't have gone into that week with that mindset if I still had another 3-4 weeks to go, because over the duration of 3-4 weeks, I could have made a much more significant difference to my body fat and to my body composition. But I think going into it with that mindset and thinking that I'm not even going to make a difference to my body composition in terms of lowering body fat, so what's the point in even adhering to my deficit anyway? I also had PMS that week, so cravings and hunger were sky high. And I think those three reasons combined meant that I just didn't really feel the need to adhere to my calorie deficit. The thing is, I went into every day that week telling myself that I was going to adhere to my calorie target, and then it never happened. So what I ended up doing was doing an unplanned reverse into the shoot. But what I should have done is just spoke to Danny about it at the start of the week, because I was so happy with my body composition. She would have increased my calories to maintenance, and we would have done a planned reverse into the shoot. And what that would have done is removed all of the frustration that I was feeling around going over my calorie target, right? One thing that I will say is, if you have a coach, is just communicate with them. Even if the issue or the struggle you're facing you feel is really small or insignificant, just talk to them about it. This is something that I really emphasize with my clients, and it's something that I am really guilty of not doing with Danny, and it's something that I really need to do more. But I guess being in that client position, I can understand why maybe at times my clients don't communicate everything with me. So it's just about reinforcing that with them, and then reminding myself that if I was one of my clients, I would want to know about this, so I should probably tell Danny about it, right? But yeah, that was the final week of the shoot. Did the shoot, it was amazing. I don't know if I've popped any of the photos up on Instagram yet. If I haven't, then they will be going up in the near future. I'm currently 10 days post-shoot, and I'm up 4 to 5 pounds from my shoot weight. A lot of that will mostly be water weight, but a lot of it will also be body fat. I have overeaten more days than I planned over Christmas. I won't lie to you. I've had a lot of social events, and what I found is that I've been giving myself permission to overeat at every single one of my social events, but doing it in a way so that when I'm back home, I'm allowing that permission to overeat to roll over into when I'm back home, and I will carry on eating. And yeah, it's just been, it has gotten a bit out of hand, and I don't completely know why I'm doing it. I think it's a mixture of it being Christmas. I've just come out of a fat loss phase, just come out of a calorie deficit that, yeah, it was difficult, and cravings and hunger were very high towards the end of it. So I think the combination of it being Christmas and my cravings being very high is just kind of compounding. One thing I will say is that even though I have been overeating on more days than I've planned, I have been holding myself accountable for this. So every time that I've done it, I've made a conscious decision knowing that I will gain body fat from doing this. Like, I understand that, and I've accepted that I am okay with that. I am okay with that extra body fat gain. I'm currently trying to get out of the I need to be lean mindset, because yeah, it does that to you. Doing these kind of preps, like whether you're doing a photo shoot prep or a contest prep, which is much more extreme, obviously the goal is aesthetic. The goal is to achieve a certain level of leanness, and you do get into that almost obsessive mindset of I need to be this lean, I need to look a certain way. And when you come out of it, it can be difficult to get out of that mindset. But I just constantly at the moment am reminding myself that the happiest that I've ever been with my body image was this year after my bulk, which was also the heaviest I've ever been, right? I loved how I looked when I was photo shoot lean. And even though my body image was still high, it was definitely lower, and it was definitely noticeably lower, right? I was finding that I was being very picky over certain parts of my body, that actually when I had more body fat on me and I was heavier, I wasn't doing that because I was much less obsessed about it. I didn't care about my body composition as much, which meant that naturally my body image was higher. I feel like fat gain and focus on performance in the gym is going to be good for me and good for getting me out of that mindset. And I'm okay with fat gain. Next steps for me are to go into a growth phase, and I actually started the growth phase this week, so on Monday the 27th. So I am in a calorie surplus at the moment. This week it's likely to have been a lot bigger than what I have programmed, but there we go, that is what it is. I'm sure that won't last for long. As soon as Christmas and New Year is over and I'm back in a good routine with things, I think I will calm down. To be honest, it's the 30th of December now. I'm not doing anything for New Year's Eve. I've not got anything planned over the weekend or for the bank holiday. Honestly, I don't think I'm going to have much of an issue with adhering to my calorie target over the next few days. So that's where I kind of am at the moment. That was a rundown of my photo shoot prep, where I'm currently at. I hope you found that somewhat interesting, and I hope that you took some value from it. If you did, remember our deal from the start of the episode. Give that subscribe button a little tickle, and that will just mean that all my future podcast episodes will pop up on your feed. You won't miss them. You'll be getting those value bombs from me, and I promise you, I will be delivering you the value bombs. And also, if you really enjoyed this episode, I would really appreciate it if you shared it on your social media. It does help me out, and you'll be helping out other people because you'll be sharing the value to other people, and we all know that sharing is caring. My Instagram handle is Alice L Young. Tag me in it so I can see. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, and I will catch you next week for next week's episode.